Back again with more sociopathic people from history. Some of these crimes are so evil we can barely touch the surface of what happened. These people show little or no remorse for their actions. Some even get away with their crimes and we'll never know who they are. So let's jump into the top 5 real people scarier than demons, part 3. Coming in at number 5 we have Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is one of the most famous unsolved cases of all time. As mentioned in part 1, some speculated that he might have been H.H. Holmes, but we might never know who it really was. Jack is known for committing 5 gruesome murders in 1888 in London. Each attack took place within 5 miles of each other. They only attacked women of the night. The name, Jack the Ripper, comes from a letter written by someone who claimed to be the assailant. These letters were published to the public. Several letters were sent to the London Met Police Service. They would taunt the officers with clues of what was going to happen next. In the late 1800s, London's East End was viewed with contempt. It was filled with skilled immigrants who came to start a new life and run businesses. The area was known for violence and crime. Being a courtesan was legal if it didn't cause a public disturbance. Thousands of brothels provided these services during the 19th century. At the time, the death of a working girl was rarely reported on or looked into. They were often attacked. Some were attacked for refusing to pay protection money to local gangs. However, these crimes stood out from the usual random violence against these women. The sadistic nature suggested a sociopath was living in the area. His crimes seemed to portray a hatred of the entire female gender. When the murders suddenly stopped, Londoners wanted answers that would never come. Even more than a century later, people are intrigued to know who this person was. There have a number of people claim to have found the identity of the Ripper, but nothing has been confirmed by Scotland Yard. In 2014, an author claimed that using DNA evidence obtained from a shawl of one of the victims that Jack's real name was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant who was one of the suspects at the time. Without confirmation from the police, we can't know which of the accused could be the real Ripper. This could forever be the most mysterious unsolved case. Coming in at number 4 we have Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman was also known as Dr. Death. He was born a middle child in a working class household in Leeds, England. He was the favourite child of his domineering mother. From an early age she instilled in him a sense of superiority that tainted the majority of his relationships later in his life. His mother was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer while he was young. He willingly oversaw her care as she declined in health. He became fascinated with the positive effect that morphine had on her suffering. She passed away from her disease in 1963. After this, he was determined to go to medical school. He was admitted to Leeds University Medical School for training. He was a loner during his life with few friends due to his arrogant attitude. He met his wife when he was 19. They married when she turned 17. 3 months later, she gave birth to their first child. By 1974, Harold had 2 children and had joined a medical practice. He initially thrived as a family practitioner before becoming addicted to painkillers. He forged prescriptions to fuel his addiction. He was forced to leave when he was caught by his colleagues. He entered a rehab program and had to pay a small fine. A few years later, he was accepted to a new medical center where he served as a general practitioner. The local undertaker began to notice that his patients seemed to be passing at an unusually high rate, usually fully clothed and sitting up in a chair. He approached Harold to ask him what the cause of this was, but he just told them it was nothing to worry about. Later, a colleague discovered the same thing, and this time she alerted the local police. They looked into it but did not fully investigate, and they found no wrongdoing on his part. He continued, and so did the amount of people passing away from his care. He was eventually found out by one determined daughter of one of his patients. Her mother had passed away after a visit to the doctor, and she refused to accept the explanations given. They uncovered a forged will by Dr. Shipman in an attempt to take the woman's fortune after she had passed due to his actions. After a long investigation, it is believed he had taken the lives of over 200 patients, but there is no clear timeline to when this started in his career. He would administer a large amount of painkillers, so he knew they would pass away within 3 hours of leaving his office. Harold was sentenced to 15 life sentences. He passed away in prison in 2004 at his own hands. Coming in at number 3 we have John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was an American serial killer who took the lives of at least 33 young male victims. He was born in 1942 in Chicago. John and his siblings grew up with an alcoholic father who would show anger to his children. He would also be this way with their mother. John's sister later said they learned to toughen up and not cry. He felt alienated at school and he was unable to play with other children due to his congenital heart condition. His dad saw his condition as failing on John's part. As he grew up, he struggled with his sexuality. His father would have never accepted his son was attracted to men, and this caused him great turmoil. John worked as a fast food chain manager during the the 1960s. He was a well-liked member of his community. He was married and divorced twice with 2 biological children. John was also a member of the Chicago area Jolly Joker Clown Club. He would dress up as his alter ego, Pogo the Clown, and perform at kids' parties or charity events. The public gave him the name the Killer Clown. He would lure his victims with the promise of work at the construction company he owned. He would then capture and do unspeakable things. In 1968, John was given a 10-year sentence for assaulting 2 young boys, but was released 2 years later on parole. In the following years, he was accused by others, but the charges often got dropped. He later referred to this as his cruising years, when he committed the majority of his crimes. He was finally caught in 1978. He was finally caught when his latest victim's mother was looking for her son. The police looked into John and found a trench system under his house filled with bodies. Once caught, he was sentenced to 12 death sentences and 21 natural life sentences. When asked why he performed as the clown, he said, "A clown can get away with murder." Coming in at number 2, we have Chris Watts. Chris Watts was the subject of the Netflix documentary American Murder: The Family Next Door. The documentary followed the tragic events of Chris taking the lives of his family to pursue a relationship with his mistress. In 2021, Watts was at the time married to 34-year-old Shanann. They were married for 6 years and had 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste. They also had a son on the way who they were planning to name Nico. The couple had moved to Colorado for Chris's new job. It was also reported that the couple had filed for bankruptcy in 2015 and was struggling financially. One day when Chris returned from a business trip early in the morning, he and his wife got into an argument. He confessed to having an affair and said he wanted a divorce. Chris said that she had threatened that he would never see his daughters or their son again. Chris then took the life of his wife. He drove her out to his worksite and buried her in a grave. His crimes then went further and more horrific. I recommend you go watch the documentary to see why he was such a monster. When his wife missed multiple appointments the following day, her friend called the police along with Chris to find out what happened to her. He tried to run away with his mistress, but after hearing what he had done, she refused. He showed little to no remorse for his actions when speaking to her. He then admitted to his crimes. He was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no parole. He is currently serving his time in Wisconsin. And finally, in at number 1, we have Zodiac KiIIer. The self-proclaimed Zodiac Killer took credit for several murders in San Francisco. During 1969 to 1974, the Zodiac Killer rampaged the San Francisco area. He taunted the police and made threats through letters sent to area newspapers. Despite intensive investigation, no one was ever arrested for the crimes. The letters started on August 1st, 1969 in San Francisco Examiner, San Francisco Chronicle, and Vallejo Times Herald each received individual handwritten letters in envelopes. The letters read, "Dear Editor, I'm the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman." The letters contained details that the public did not know. It went on to threaten further attacks if the letters were not printed on the front page of the papers. Each letter included a symbol which went on to be the Zodiac symbol. Each letter came with one of a 3-part cipher that he claimed contained his identity. It was clear he had thought about these letters and had put great detail into them. These letters continued to arrive as the crimes commenced. He took great joy in taunting the police publicly and having the public being so aware of his actions. After a few days, a public school teacher and his wife were able to solve the first cipher with it reading, "I like killing people because it's so much fun." During the investigation, the public were very involved with the theories, solving the clues in the papers. In 1969, a witness was able to give the police a description of someone leaving one of the crime scenes. From this, a sketch was drawn up and was seen all over the media. Still, with the mounting evidence and now a description, he still evaded the police successfully. In 1974, the letters stopped, but the investigation continued. Some still trying to solve the mystery to this day. In October of this year, a team of 40 former law enforcement investigators who call themselves the Case Breakers claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer. However, the FBI stated that the case is still open. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Which unsolved mystery scares you the most? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 4. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, and until next time, I'll see you later.